Good evening. We'll have the first time that I can remember in ages that I'm taking the class of Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, since Swami Sarvadevanandaji is out of town. We'll start with the chant. Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Shravana Mangalam Shrimadatam Bhuvi Kridanti Ye Bhurida Janaha. O Lord, your words like sweet nectar refresh the afflicted. Your words, which poets have sung in verses, vanquish the sins of the worldly. Blessed are they who hear of you, and blessed indeed are they who speak of you. How great is their reward. This is one verse from the Bhagavata. It's when the gopis were separated from Sri Krishna and they're longing to see him, and they sing a hymn called the Gopi Gita. And this verse is one of the verses of that Gopi Gita. And just think how wonderful it is. Tava Kathamritam. Tava, your. Katha means words or talking about. And Amrita is that word which means both nectar and eternal, that which is indestructible, deathless. Amrita, deathless. So it's like in the Greek mythology that the gods drank ambrosia. I think the word ambrosia is connected to this word amrita, that rendered them immortal, that ambrosia, and it was tasted like nectar. So your words are like that ambrosia which takes us across death. And Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam, the people who are suffering in this world, well, it's like nectar to those, soothes those who are suffering in this world. Those, again, the saints and sages have sung your words and spread them far and wide. And Shravana Mangalam. Mangalam means auspicious. Shravana, to hear, right? Shravana, first Shravana, Manana Nidhyasana, Shravana. In this case, Shravana Mangalam. It's just to hear your words is so auspicious. And then those those are the real people who really do good to humanity, are those who spread your teachings. So that's the M selected this verse as the first word of this verse as the name of his book. He called it Sri Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita, the nectar of your teachings and the nectar of the talks about you. You're just reading about Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, about his doings. That's also like nectar for his disciples and for devotees who have got the touch of Sri Ramakrishna, feel that attraction for him and his teachings. It's like nectar, and it takes us across the ocean of death. So I have selected chapter 13, the Master and M, on page 274, because we have to start somewhere, and so I poked around a little, and I thought, all right, and it doesn't really matter where we start, we just dive in a little. And it's wonderful to see the description, August 19, 1883. It was Sunday, the first day after the full moon. Sri Ramakrishna was resting after his noon meal. The midday offering had been made in the temples, and the temple doors were closed. M always takes a few minutes to describe what's going on. If we have been to Dakshineshwar, we can really imagine. We know the temple doors are closed, he's resting in his room, he had lunch, everything is a little quiet, it's the hottest part of the day. If we haven't been also, we can still imagine it. There are photographs and there are maps and those things, so we can imagine those things and plan our pilgrimage one day in the distant future. In the early afternoon, the master sat up on the small couch in his room. M prostrated himself before him and sat on the floor. The master was talking to him on the philosophy of Vedanta. This tradition of bowing is very Indian tradition, where we touch the feet of the respected persons. And in the Indian families, one would do so to one's parents or one's grandparents, or maybe an elder uncle, or even one's elder brother or sister. At certain times of year, one would do that. So the full salutation would be bowing down to the floor, touching one's head to the floor, and then touching the feet gently, and touching your hand to your head and your heart. That's called taking the dust, the feeling that there's some dust on the feet of that respected person. That dust itself is holy, so that we take that as a blessing. And that's the tradition which he is describing here, that M prostrated himself before Sri Ramakrishna and then sat on the floor. So Sri Ramakrishna is beginning here his teachings. Self-knowledge is discussed in the Ashtavakra Samhita. I think by now Swami Sarvapriyananda has made that book very famous. It was famous before that also. Very staunch, a book on staunch non-dualism, staunch Advaita. It takes the very full non-dualist view. Our true nature is none other than the infinite blessed reality. And it's a beautiful text, simple Sanskrit. Sri Ramakrishna wouldn't let people read it. Only he wanted Narendra to read it. And Narendra didn't like it because he was not yet accepting non-dualism. He was a Brahmo from the Brahmo Samaj, and he liked the attitude of the Brahmo Samaj, which was God is personal but formless. So it doesn't have God doesn't have any form, but is a personal God, separate from the devotee. I am with my devotee, I'm separate from God, who is the formless infinite reality. Whereas non-dualism says there is only that one infinite ocean of existence, consciousness, bliss, absolute, and you are that. This body, mind, separate personality, these are all mithya, these are all illusions. They have a temporary seeming reality, but ultimately they are unreal, and only the infinite is real. So M tended to like a little bit the path of jnana, and Sri Ramakrishna was constantly trying to wean him towards the path of bhakti, towards devotion. And I think he succeeded also. So he continues, he says, the non-dualists say, notice how he says the non-dualists means, I'm not saying that, they're saying that. The non-dualists say, soham, that is, I am the Supreme Self. Saha, aham, becomes soham, I am the Supreme Self. This is the view of the sannyasis of the Vedantic school. But this is not the right attitude for householders who are conscious of doing everything themselves. That being so, how can they declare, I am that, the actionless Supreme Self? Since if we are engaged in many activities, it's hard to say, well, I don't do anything. No, I am the actionless. I'm doing all these things, and yet I say I'm not doing anything. It is just the body that's doing it. It is just the play of the gunas, or it is the Divine Mother that's doing it. I am the witness, watching everything unfold. It's very difficult to maintain that attitude when one has lots of duties and lots of activities. So Sri Ramakrishna used to discourage that view, that attitude. According to the non-dualists, the self is unattached. Good and bad, virtue and vice, and the other pairs of opposites cannot in any way injure the self, though they undoubtedly afflict those who have identified themselves with their bodies. Nicely put, isn't that? It doesn't affect us, who we truly are, in the least. Here are the pairs of opposites, the dvandvas. I think most of you know. We come back again and again to this: good and evil, pleasure and pain, hot and cold. These are the pairs of opposites which we find in our daily experience all the time. They cannot in any way injure the self, though they undoubtedly afflict those who have identified themselves with their bodies. Means all of us, right? We are still identified with our bodies to at least a certain extent. Theoretically, we may know, yes, I am that infinite reality. I am pure consciousness. I am a spirit inhabiting a body. But most of the time, we are very much aware of the body. So, smoke soils the wall, certainly, but it cannot in any way affect akasha, space. Interesting. The smoke in a room, it blackens the walls, but the space in the room is unaffected by the smoke. The wind blows, the smoke clears, it's gone. It doesn't affect the space. But the walls are dirty. So like that, our true nature is unaffected. But the body certainly gets blackened by the smoke. The body is affected by hot, heat, and cold, and pain, and all these things. So now he's mentioning one devotee. Following the Vedantists of this class, Krishna Kishore used to say, I am Ka, meaning Akasha. The Ka refers to the Akasha, which means that's one of the Panchabhutas, one of the 5 elements, space. The most subtle of the elements, Akasha, space. Sometimes it's translated as ether. Swami Vivekananda often translated it as ether. At that time, the physicists believed that there was a substance called ether through which electromagnetic waves were propagated. The propagation of light and radio waves was thought to occur through ether. And afterwards, the physicists decided that no, there was no ether. It's not required. The electromagnetic waves propagate of themselves through space. So space may be a better, or obviously Swami Nikhilananda decided to keep it in the Sanskrit, Akasha. Then he says, being a great devotee, he could say that with some justification, but it is not becoming for others to do so. So, he discouraged this attitude, I am that infinite reality, I am he, I am Ka. In fact, once he mentioned somewhere else that he comes to visit Krishna Kishore and he looks very worried. And Sri Ramakrishna asked him, what's the matter? Well, the tax collector came. He said, if I don't pay my taxes, he's going to take all my pots and pans and sell them to pay my taxes. And Sri Ramakrishna said, well, what is that to you? You are Ka. Because he had that attitude. How can that affect you? So that's the... Then he gives this very nice distinction. But to feel that one is a free soul is very good. So that doesn't mean we're saying, I am that infinite reality, I don't do anything, I'm unaffected. But we do say, I am free. I am a free soul. By constantly repeating, I am free, a person verily becomes free. On the other hand, by constantly repeating, I am bound, a person certainly becomes bound to worldliness. This is one of his oft-repeated teachings. What we think, what we say has a tremendous effect on how we live, how we feel. If we constantly feeling, I am bad, I am bound, I am hopeless, I am miserable, we're going to feel those things. So I guess this has also manifested in the kind of New Agey system of affirmations. But there's you've heard of that probably, where people, it's a practice where you choose an affirmation, and so you say, I am wealthy, all the wealth is mine, for those who want money, no? All right, we're not going to apply it that way, those of us who are seekers of God, but that is a principle which Sri Ramakrishna also recognized and presented. If we constantly, and he often uses this, the fool who says only, I am a sinner, verily drowns himself or herself in worldliness. One should rather say, I have chanted the name of God. How can I be a sinner? How can I be bound? So he gives this really good. This ami mukta, I am a free soul. I am mukta, I am liberated. That's the language that he uses here. But now, interestingly, after telling all of this, Sri Ramakrishna confesses to M. You see, I am very much depressed today. Hridoy has written me that he is very ill. Why should I feel dejected about it? Is it because of Maya or Daya? So here, Sri Ramakrishna has admitted that his mind also is affected by someone's suffering. Hridoy is his nephew. Hridoy served him very assiduously, very carefully for a long time. And towards the end of that service, as he's going to mention shortly, he also tortured him a lot. And finally, he was sent away. So on the one hand, Hridoy tortured him. On the other hand, he served him. And now he has heard from the countryside that Hridoy is ill. He says his mind is in a very bad state. Monta boro kharap hoyeche means very depressed. I am very much depressed today. In the Bengali, it has a slightly different emphasis. We say, my mind is feeling bad. Not that I am depressed. Actually, the more literal translation would be, my mind is in a depressed state. My mind is in a negative state today. So that's actually a healthy distinction to make. All right, my mind is feeling bad today. I am free, of course, but my mind is affected. See, if even Sri Ramakrishna gets affected by these things, we shouldn't worry too much if we get affected. But, all right, so what has happened? He asks M, is it because of Maya or Daya? And M, of course, didn't know what to reply. He says M could not find suitable words for a reply and remained silent. Very often M would just remain silent. After that first visit, when he had the fight with Sri Ramakrishna, he realized, I'm not going to get into it with this. He knows, I don't know. I'll just wait and hear what he has to say.
So what's Daya?
So he's going to explain exactly what both of these things are. That's the next paragraph. Maya, in short, Maya in Bengali means attachment, and Daya means compassion. So he's going to explain this. Do you know what Maya is? It is attachment to relatives, parents, brother and sister, wife and children, nephew and niece. Daya means love for all created beings. Now, what is this, my feeling about Hridoy? Is it Maya or Daya? So it seems he even is wondering a little bit. Is this feeling he has for Hridoy, who's sick in the countryside, is it because of attachment or is it compassion? So he says, but Hridoy did so much for me. He served me wholeheartedly and nursed me when I was ill. But later he tormented me also. The torment became so unbearable that once I was about to commit suicide by jumping into the Ganges from the top of the embankment. But he did so much to serve me. Now my mind will be at rest if he gets some money. But whom shall I ask for it? Who likes to speak about such things to our rich visitors? So it's an interesting little conversation, and there it ends. He doesn't discuss anything more about it. This Maya and Daya. Love for all beings, this Daya, compassion. So it's a very good question. When we feel the ideal, of course, is Daya, to have love, equal love for all beings. That everybody, we have the same love flowing towards everybody, because the same divine reality same divine divinity shines in every being and in my being. And love is simply the expression of our deep connection, our ultimate unity manifesting in duality is love. And Swami Vivekananda says it so beautifully. He says, if you see a cat loving its kittens, stand and pray. You are in the presence of the divine. You are in the presence of God. Wherever you see love manifest, you are in the presence of God. God is love. And in another place he writes to Mary Hale, the practice is through this feeling of oneness that is love. Love is a feeling of oneness. It's, as I like to think of it, the manifestation of the principle of non-duality in duality is love. So actually it flows to all people and all beings. Yet we know from our personal experience that certain people, we feel closer to them. We feel more love for certain people than we do for other people. So I think the more we actually the more we direct our love to God, in whatever form our practice is, say our chosen ideal, the more we can love the divine intensely, the more we can actually love all beings, the more we can love even those who are difficult to love. Like evildoers, like criminals, like those kind of people who actually harm others. That is the most difficult to love, people like that. So, Sri Ramakrishna, considering how much Hridaya also tortured Sri Ramakrishna, we can see that there is certainly a great element of compassion in his love for Hridaya. Most people after that kind of torture would say, enough of you, I'll never see you again, I don't care about you. Let him suffer. He made me suffer. Let him suffer. That would be an ordinary reaction to that situation. But Sri Ramakrishna, no, he feels bad. He feels genuinely bad because Hridaya is ill. So then we skip here the description. Says it is now 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and some devotees show up. Adhar Sen and Balaram arrived, two of Sri Ramakrishna's close devotees. After saluting Sri Ramakrishna, they sat on the floor and asked him if he was well. The master said, "Yes, I am well physically, but a little troubled in mind." He did not refer to Hridaya and his troubles. Interesting. Then the conversation turned to the goddess Singhavahini. Singhavahini means she who rides the Singha, the lion. In other words, Mother Durga is one of the names of Mother Durga, Singhavahini. And there's a temple in Jairambati, right near Holy Mother's place, her birthplace. Just 2-3 minutes walking from Holy Mother's birthplace is a temple to Mother Singhavahini. Only there's no image actually in that temple. There's just a vessel. There are actually 3 pots, brass pots filled with water, and they represent 3 different forms of Divine Mother. So whatever it may be. So Sri Ramakrishna describes how he visited one home where the Divine Mother was worshipped as Singhavahini. He says, "Yes, I visited the goddess. She is worshipped by one of the branches of the Malik family of Calcutta. This branch of the family is now in straitened circumstances, and the house they live in is dilapidated. The walls and floor are spotted with moss and pigeon droppings, and the cement and plaster are crumbling. But the other branches of the Malik family are well off. This branch has no signs of prosperity." To M, "Well, what does that signify?" Again, M remains silent. M was Western educated. It took him a long time to accept some of the common principles of Sanatana Dharma, of the Hindu tradition, like the idea of past lives, that we have had previous incarnations and we will have future incarnations, maybe, or we are trying to get free of coming back again and again. So he had a lot of suspicion about that. He didn't fully accept it. And so Sri Ramakrishna is now and then poking him about that. And so he says, the thing is that everyone must reap the result of past karma. One must admit the influence of tendencies inherited from past births and the result of the prarabdha karma. So here he is, Sri Ramakrishna. It's not exactly, see, Vedanta doesn't have it's not like Islam or Christianity, which have, or even Buddhism, which have specific doctrines. And you say, okay, I am Christian or Muslim, I accept this doctrines. I accept that Jesus Christ was born and he died on the cross for my sins and he was resurrected after 3 days and all that. There's a creed, and you have to say, yes, I believe that. And that makes me a good Christian if I can believe those things. Vedanta doesn't have that. That you have to believe in reincarnation or you can't be a good Vedantist. You can be a good Vedanta is about discovering who we are, the principle of consciousness, and how that manifests in different divine forms. But we don't have to, it's not like an article of faith. We have to believe it. And yet, pretty much all the dharma traditions of India, including Hinduism, what we now call Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, and Buddhism, and Sikhism, and Jainism, these four all accept more or less as a matter of fact. It's more or less accepted, though you don't have to accept it to be called a Hindu or anything like that, this idea of reincarnation. And there is quite a bit of evidence, even scientific evidence now appearing about this. Sri Ramakrishna, it seems, for him it was just a matter of fact that, yeah, of course, you have to, one admits the influence of these tendencies inherited from past births and the result of the prarabdha karma. Prarabdha means that karma which is already manifesting in this life. We have a certain amount of karma stored up. Maybe it's a big amount. And not all of it perhaps is manifesting in this lifetime of ours. Only a portion of it is manifesting in this lifetime of ours. That portion which is manifested this body and which is manifesting in this life, that's called the prarabdha. So he indicates it. And then he says, this is beautiful, nevertheless, in that dilapidated house, I saw the face of the goddess radiating a divine light. One must believe in the divine presence in the image. I wonder if there's a little... Yeah, one has to more or less say, one has to accept this samskaras and this prarabdha. Samskaras, the tendency. Samskara is the tendency of our mind, which is developed over numerous incarnations, and the prarabdha is that karma which is manifesting in this life. And so he says this idea that there is a special divine presence where God is remembered, where God is worshipped, where the divine is invoked, and there's a special manifestation of the divine in the image. From the highest standpoint of Vedanta, of non-dualism, there is only that infinite reality, and you can't say that there is more of it here and less of it there. It's equally present everywhere, because actually everything is existing in that. Everything is resting in infinite consciousness. There's not more of it manifesting one place and less of it manifesting in another. But from our standpoint here, where we are conscious of ourselves as separate bodies, and we recognize that there are some actions which lead us towards the divine and some actions which lead us away from the divine. And we recognize that in some places the vibrations are very holy. Why do we like to meditate in the temple? And why don't we go down to Hollywood Boulevard and meditate there? God is equally present on Hollywood Boulevard. Yes, from one standpoint that's true. But from the other standpoint, we take the advantage of the divine presence which is manifesting here in this temple, because now since 1938, when this temple was built, there's been daily worship performed here, daily meditation performed here. So we feel a certain presence in the temple. And Sri Ramakrishna observed that presence in the image of the Divine Mother at the Malik's dilapidated house. And this is what would have been one of those aristocratic houses which was with probably 3-4 story building, and it would be from the outside it's a rectangle or a square and there'd be a large courtyard on the inside of the building, and so you'd enter through a gate, maybe even an archway, and then you'd be inside this, and on one side would be the worship hall where worship, especially big worship services, would be held, and there would have been this image of the mother, and there would be, because they're poor, so they don't have money to pay for servants to clean all the pigeon droppings and everything. India, that's one thing. It's constant, it's very dusty and dirty, and things are always in a state of, you see how entropy is very strong in India. I just remember the trips on the Ganges, taking a boat trip from Belur Mutt, our main monastery, up to Dakshineshwar, the Kali temple. It's just about a half an hour, 40 minutes boat ride on the Ganges. It's wonderful, depending on which way the water is flowing. And you see going along the bank, you see all these buildings, and you see them in different states of repair and disrepair. Some buildings are beautifully painted and everything is nice, and some other buildings, the paint is getting black, and it's maybe there's some weeds growing around. And then you see another building where actually the stucco has come off, and you see the bricks inside, and maybe there's a tree that started growing on the roof of it, and the roots are starting to go down and starting to break apart the building. And somehow that happens very fast in India. Maybe it's the very hot climate, and there's so many plants, and they grow so quickly, and you have banyan trees which have a very small seed, and that seed falls and it starts to grow and breaks the buildings. So you see, then you'll find some building that's almost gone. It's almost completely broken down. And then the next to it again will be another fixed up building. So you see these a lot. And to maintain things, every day in our monastery, every day the floors get cleaned. Every day with water. Clean the floors every day. So otherwise things start getting dirty. But it's wonderful. It's so clean. When you clean something every day, it feels so clean and fresh and sattvic. And so that was a little digression. Sorry about that. So now he's remembering about a trip. Once I went to Vishnupur, which is a city sort of between Calcutta and Kamarpukur. And its specialty there's a terracotta. They have temples covered with terracotta tiles, beautiful. The Raja of that place has several fine temples. In one of them, there is an image of the Divine Mother called Mrinmayi, which literally means made of earth. There are several lakes near the temple, known as the Lal Band, Krishna Band, and so on. In the water of one of the lakes, I could smell the ointments that women use for their hair. How do you explain that? I didn't know at that time that the woman devotees offer ointments to the goddess, Mrinmayi, while visiting her temple. Near the lake, I went into samadhi, though I had not yet seen the image in the temple. In that state, I saw the divine form from the waist up, rising from the water. Sri Ramakrishna he was in such a state of, he had that very subtle spiritual perception. So without entering the temple, he had already had a vision of the Divine Mother in the lake. There's a legend associated with that temple that the Divine Mother was born as a young girl, daughter of the Raja, and one day he got impatient with her and he said, "Go away." And so she went away, and she emerged into the water of the lake, and after that, Sri Ramakrishna saw her rising from the lake. So who can explain that? There's a similar incident that when he went to Nadia, the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Deva, he went and he saw the temple marking his birthplace, supposed birthplace, and he didn't feel much inspiration. He was a great devotee of Chaitanya, but he didn't feel much inspiration. But then in the boat on the Ganges, suddenly he saw Sri Chaitanya Nityananda dancing on the waves in an ecstatic vision, and they came towards him and then they merged in him. And it turns out that the course of the river had changed. Rivers, nowadays we build concrete walls around rivers, but if they don't have that, they move, they change over time. And so at that spot where he had the vision, that was likely the actual birthplace of Sri Chaitanya. And afterwards the river moved, and so the village moved, and so his birthplace also moved. In the meantime, other devotees had arrived. Someone referred to the political revolution and civil war in Kabul, Afghanistan. In those days, a greater India was all sort of a part of a greater India, or greater, whatever you want to call it. A devotee said that Yaqub Khan, the Amir of Afghanistan, had been deposed. He told the master that the Amir was a great devotee of God. This would be a good thing to research. I didn't do all my homework before the class. It would be good to research about Yaqub Khan and what happened to him. And then, so Sri Ramakrishna gives a reply to this. Perhaps the devotee is suggesting, see, the Amir was a great devotee, but what happened to him? He's been deposed. And in those days, there was war in Afghanistan. There's been war in Afghanistan for so many centuries. It's tragic. So Sri Ramakrishna says, but you must remember that pleasure and pain are the characteristics of the embodied state. It comes back again and again to this. In Kavi Kankan's Chandi, this must be one of the local variations of the Chandi that's in Bengal. In Kavi Kankan's Chandi, it is written that Kaluvir was sent to prison and a heavy stone placed on his chest. Yet Kalu was born as a result of a boon from the Divine Mother of the universe. Thus, pleasure and pain are inevitable when the soul accepts a body. So he's referring to a story. One man, a very saintly somebody who was born by Divine Mother's boon, was tortured in prison, putting a large stone on his chest so that just breathing is difficult, incredibly difficult with that heavy weight on the chest. Sounds horrible. Again, take the case of Srimanta, who was a great devotee. Though his mother, Kullanna, was very much devoted to the Divine Mother, there was no end to his troubles. He was almost beheaded. There is also the instance of the woodcutter, who was a great lover of the Divine Mother. She appeared before him and showed him much grace and love. But he had to continue his profession of woodcutting and earn his livelihood by that arduous work. Again, while Devaki, Krishna's mother, was in prison, she had a vision of God himself endowed with 4 hands, holding mace, discus, conch shell, and lotus. But with all that, she couldn't get out of prison. So he's given a number of examples here. Why do we turn to God? There are different reasons people turn to God. And sometimes when we're suffering, we turn more intently to God. But if we think that I'm a devotee, therefore I shouldn't have any suffering, then it becomes a kind of shopkeeping. Swami Vivekananda would call it shopkeeping. I give my love to God, so God should protect me. God should make my life completely smooth, and everything should be nice, and I should have plenty of money, no financial difficulties, no health difficulties, nothing. Everything should be just hunky-dory, and I should become famous, and everybody should love me. And that sounds nice. Deep inside, we have that kind of idea. I'm such a great devotee. Why isn't God giving me all these things? So what do we want? What do we really want? Do we want God? Or do we want good health and money and all those things? M complains here. He says, why speak only of getting out of prison? This body is the source of all our troubles. Devaki should have been freed from the body. So, getting a vision of God, shouldn't we then become liberated? And then Sri Ramakrishna comes back again to the karma. He brings that up again. The truth is that one must reap the results of the prarabdha karma. The body remains as long as the results of past actions do not completely wear away. Once a blind man bathed in the Ganges, and as a result was freed from his sins, but his blindness remained all the same. Then everybody laughs. Sometimes we don't know quite why they laugh, because maybe it's the context, or the Bengali language it's a little funnier. It was because of his evil deeds in his past birth that he had to undergo that affliction. And M now is agreeing. He's trying to understand it. He says, yes, sir, the arrow that has already left the bow is beyond our control. This is the idea of prarabdha karma, that karma which is manifesting in this life, it's like an arrow that has already been loosed from the bow. You can't stop it. Until it reaches the target, there's nothing you can do. There's more arrows in the quiver. You don't have to, if you get liberation, then you don't fire another arrow. And if we work carefully, if we start doing all our work as karma yoga, then we don't put fresh arrows in the quiver to be shot later. But the one that's already been loosed, it's on its way. Nothing can be done. This is a little risky, you know. Sri Ramakrishna here says it was because of his evil deeds in his past birth that he had to undergo that affliction. For Sri Ramakrishna, he could say that this is a story to demonstrate something, but there is a tendency, or there can be a tendency, when taking this karmic, using karma as a reason for our suffering, to blame people for their suffering. You're blind. That's your bad karma. You did bad things in your past life. Now you have to suffer that. That's not the compassionate application of the law of karma. The proper thing to do would be to say, it is my good fortune that I have the opportunity to help you. You cannot see. It's a blessing to me that I can serve you, that I can maybe teach you how to use a cane. I can teach you how to train your dog to be a seeing eye dog, or whatever it may be. Or I can develop some technology that allows you to have some sight, or to restore your sight, or whatever it may be. So I just wanted to bring that up, that we should be careful not to use this idea of karma as a way of blaming people for their suffering. It's rather, we can apply it to ourselves. I'm suffering, all right. It may help me to accept this suffering if I simply say, all right, it's my karma, I have to work it out. Sri Ramakrishna continues, however much a bhakta, a devotee, may experience physical joy and sorrow, he or she always has knowledge and the treasure of divine love. This treasure never leaves him or her. Interesting, this is obviously describing a superior devotee. That treasure of divine love. This treasure never leaves. Take the Pandava brothers, for instance, the brothers of the Gita, Arjuna and his brothers. Though they suffered so many calamities, they did not lose their God consciousness even once. Where can you find people like that, endowed with so much knowledge and devotion? So he's talking, of course, with M, and who else is there? Do you remember? Balaram and other Sen are there with him. And probably there may be other people, but it's not indicated that there are any other people there. Usually Sundays was crowded, but maybe this day it wasn't too crowded. And then, just then, two more people show up. Narendra and Colonel Vishwanath Upadhyay, who was from Nepal. And Sri Ramakrishna called him captain. Narendra was then 22 years old and studying in college. They saluted the master and sat down. Now wait a minute. That's wrong. Narendra was born in 1863. This is 1883. Right? Or was it August 19, 1883. This is 1863, so he's 20. M made a mistake. Okay, he's about 22. He's actually 20. All right. And studying in college. They saluted the master and said, that's actually a pretty big mistake. I wonder how he could have made that mistake. He's 20. It says 22. How much that? Could be, whatever it may be. I'm crossing out the 2. Yeah, I'll have to find it.
He did not know actually at that time what he recorded.
Right.
So he just says, perhaps he was 20, perhaps he was 22.
Yeah, right.
Not that he was giving the chronological life.
He says in Narendra Boyosh Bochor Baish. So,
around 20.
yeah, so anyhow.
He was not sanguine about it.
All right. So now, afterwards, of course, he knew it. So now we can correct it. So they saluted the master and sat down. The master, Sri Ramakrishna, requested Narendra to sing. The tanpura hung on the west wall of the room. The devotees fixed their eyes on Narendra as he began to tune the drums. Drums means what? Baya o tablar shur bandha hoite laglo. Right, the two drums, the tabla, which we refer to as the tabla, so they have to be tuned. And I think most of you have seen how it's the small-headed drum that needs to be tuned, which is called the tabla, and they'll use a little hammer and tap either down or up and then hit it so that it maintains the perfect tension. And because of differences in humidity and playing it and all those things, or maybe the tanpura is slightly differently tuned. So, and if you have a keen ear, it's painful when the tabla and the tanpura are not at the same pitch. They're clashing. So for those of us who are musicians, we understand that. Whereas if we don't have that ear, it sounds fine. What are you doing? Why? But actually, it's painful if they don't match. So Narendra is tuning the drums, the tabla, and Sri Ramakrishna says to Narendra, "The drums don't sound as well as before." The captain pipes up, "They are now full. Therefore, they are quiet, like a vessel filled with water, or they are like a holy man who remains silent when his heart is full of God consciousness." And then Sri Ramakrishna always had some kind of, he would have some reply to anything somebody says. He says, "But what about sages like Narada, who went about talking and singing. They talked, says Captain, they talked because they were moved by the sufferings of others. Sri Ramakrishna agrees with him. He says, you are right. After attaining samadhi, Narada, Shukadeva, and others came down a few steps, as it were, to the plane of normal consciousness and broke their silence out of compassion for the sufferings of others and to help them. So then Narendra sings a song. And I'm wondering, he's tuning the tabla. Is he playing the tabla, or who's playing the tanpura? It's not indicated here.
Swami used to play tanpura, right?
He could play tanpura and sing, but he could also play tabla, and he could sing while playing. He used to play the pakawach, the drum which has like a mridanga. So it's not indicated here. It only says that Narendra began to sing. And this would always send Sri Ramakrishna into ecstasy, because he would throw his whole heart into the song, and he had a beautiful voice, which this idea of singing, entering the bhava, entering the mood of the songs. Narendra and Sri Ramakrishna both, they could do that fully, and that's a real art. It's one thing to sing a song, and it's another to dive into the song, to manifest the mood of the song, so the song expresses a certain attitude, and to fully manifest that. And that is a tradition in our order also of singing, that one should, for instance, Swami Brahmananda, Raja Maharaj, he would he sort of criticized those who would sing from a book. They would sing while reading the words. That means, how can you really sing it? How can you dive into the song? How can you manifest the bhava of that song if you have to read the words while you're singing it? So to do music as spiritual practice, as sadhana, to sing a song expressing that, you have to memorize the song. You have to know it backwards and forwards, and then you can throw your whole heart into it, because you don't have to read the words and think. Then you're thinking of words and letters and reading it, and you can't properly sing. So Narendra would have memorized the song, and this song is. The first verse is, "Oh, when will dawn for me that day of blessedness, when he who is all good, all beauty, and all truth will light the inmost shrine of my heart? When shall I sink at last, ever beholding him, into that ocean of delight?" It's got about 3 or 4 more verses, and for whatever reason, Swami Nikhilananda did not feel the need to translate it. So it's not fully translated here, but the first line is, "Satyam Shiva Sundara Rupa Bhati Hridi Mandire." The Hridi Mandire, in the innermost shrine of my heart, when will shine that he who is all good, all beauty, and all truth. So that this song expresses the longing for the divine. There's a beautiful song of longing that will, singing such a song, also we can take the help of these kinds of songs to feel our longing for God. Sri Ramakrishna, no sooner had the master heard a few words of the song than he went into deep samadhi. He sat with folded hands, facing the east. His body was erect, and his mind completely bereft of worldly consciousness. His breath had almost stopped. With unwinking eyes, he sat motionless as a picture on a canvas. His mind had dived deep into the ocean of God's beauty. So after that, Sri Ramakrishna was seated in samadhi. After the song, Narendra gets up, he leaves. He left the room, went to the east veranda where Hazra was seated on a blanket with a japamala, a rosary of beads in his hand, and they fell to talking. Other devotees arrived. The master came down from samadhi and looked around. He could not find Narendra. the Tampura was lying on the floor, he noticed that the earnest eyes of the devotees were riveted on him. And then he says, he has lighted the fire. Now it doesn't matter whether he stays in the room or goes out. It's probably a good place to stop. There's no good place to stop. One keeps going, and Sri Ramakrishna's teachings keep going. So the Tanpura was lying on the floor. It means probably Narendra was playing the Tanpura. Maybe there was another devotee there who could play the tabla, and so Narendra had tuned them and played. We don't know. It's not indicated in this text. We've actually been talking for almost an hour. Are there any comments or questions or objections? Tejas? Tejas already had her hand up. And then your turn.
I had a question about the beginning of the reading when Sri Ramakrishna says that we shouldn't have that attitude of I am that as a householder because you're so immersed in things. And I mean, he didn't say this, but it can kind of bring that sort of like arrogance, right, that makes spiritual life difficult. And I was wondering, what was your take on why is it better to say I am free? And the word was mukta, right? Like jiva mukta, so like a free soul. Like, isn't that kind of like, I can't see the difference very well between those two. Why one's better than the other?
To say I am mukta suggests that I'm still identifying myself as a soul, not as the infinite. So I think that's the distinction. That's how I understand it. That to feel that one is a free soul is very good. By constantly repeating, I am free, a person becomes free. Whereas to say, I am that means I am God, basically. I am that infinite existence, consciousness, bliss, absolute. So
even if you don't feel free yet, you should say that so that it can get you there?
Sri Ramakrishna seems to suggest here that yes, to feel that one is a free soul is very good. Right, we don't feel free. We still feel hemmed in. But to say I am bound, that binds us more. To say I am free, I am in my true nature free. Yeah, it seems like it's somewhat of a subtle distinction, but I think on the strict non-dualist approach is I am that infinite reality. I don't do anything. Whereas here, all right, I'm doing, but I'm a free soul. And gradually we bring in the idea of detachment and freedom and joy. Indrajit.
Now, I was just making a small observation, maybe I'm wrong. When you said Swamiji went outside, maybe he got so absorbed through the song, he just wanted to go outside and just, be in that moment. Maybe I was just thinking, why did he go outside?
Yeah, it's not indicated in the text, yeah, and of course M may not know why he.
Yeah, because he took his beads and he went outside. And
no. It's Hazra had the beads. Narendra didn't have beads.
So he just, sometimes if he just wanted to get that, that's my feeling. I could be wrong. And also, when you're discussing about I am free and I am that. Would it be wrong to say, when you say I am free, because sometimes we are caught up with all these daily, things, and when I keep saying it's an affirmation, I'm free, so that helps. And I'm that is more like when you feel that you're merged with what you just said, with the Paramatma, or you merge in that state. So I don't know. That's what I got from what you're saying.
Hazra used to say, I am he, soham. And yet he was a kind of, Sri Ramakrishna looked down at him as a kind of a hypocrite, because he was, at the same time, he had a debt and he was trying to get money. And he would say, well, if you realize God also gives you money. God can give you money. It's nothing to him, he can give you money. So why not? Like the guy who was praying to God, oh Lord, you are infinite. For you, 1,000,000 years is like just a second. For you, $1 million is like just a penny. Oh God, give me a penny. And then he hears the answer. Wait a second. So, anyone else? Shiva Priya?
Yes. The difference between prarabdha and sanskara.
And what?
Sanskara.
Oh, samskara.
Samskara.
Samskara. Yes.
Yes, because one is current, right? And the other is like, I'm carrying it life after life. Like, I'm just confused about the two.
Samskara means like a tendency. You like chocolate. Do you like chocolate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Black one.
So you eat a chocolate.
Yeah.
Your mind you get some pleasure. Your mind wants to repeat that. So you find it difficult. You see some dark chocolate. You find it difficult to restrain your hand from going. Maybe it's not dinner time. Maybe it's you've just had dinner and you've had a full meal and you see that chocolate. I want that. That's samskara. That tendency wants to repeat itself again and again. So similarly, our love for people, our tendencies towards some people tend to be very calm. Other people tend to get excited, like me. Some people get angry very easily. Some people get sad very easily. These are like tendencies that are in our minds, and the mind goes in that same tendency. So we try to develop samskaras that are God-centered samskaras. We train the mind to think of God. We try to do japa all the time. So that's also developing a samskara, a tendency for the mind to flow in that direction. And it's related to karma. It's because actions create samskaras. As we do, we have certain thoughts, and those manifest in actions, and actions become habits. A samskara is like a habit. Repeated action becomes a habit. And karma, in this sense, the prarabdha karma, is simply that mass of karmic residue, or that we have done certain actions, and they will have their cosmic reaction upon us. And the particular amount of cosmic reaction that is manifesting in this life is called prarabdha karma. It determines, according to the theory, it determines how long we will live. Perhaps it determines how we will die. It determines perhaps whom we meet in life, who we marry, or who we don't marry, what illnesses we get, these kind of things. Depending on how far you take the theory of karma, all these things could be said to be part of prarabdha karma.
Okay. Thank you.
So I don't know if there's questions online. We're kind of out of time. There's a question. The compassionate actions of monks, religion, etc. on one hand, and the inhumane actions of dictators, drug culture, massive death, war, and earthquake on the other hand are all divine play of God. Or yes, from one standpoint, that's true. That's, and then Swami Turiyananda would say, as the young Hari, he would say to Sri Ramakrishna, but this play of God is our death. And then Sri Ramakrishna asks, what? Who are you? It's all Mother. It's all Mother's play. And then there's a question about raga and dvesha, aversion, attachment and aversion. Attachment to life and aversion to death, attachment to the compassionate persons or God's actions, and aversion to the dictator God's actions comes under raga dvesha. We're mixing stuff up here. In contact with the world, the mind has these two different kinds of samskaras, raga and dvesha, attachment and aversion. I guess we're trying to go beyond that. Okay, someone is asking about will and determination, and what if my samskara is lack of it, then am I in trouble? Well, this is, karma determines the current manifestations. It doesn't determine our ability to do. But true, if we have trouble, that may be part of it. Spiritual life is a is
the attendants, they go side by side, right?
the karma and the samskaras.
Yeah.
But we always have that's the beauty of the idea of karma, is that we hold our future in our own hands. And what we think now, and there's that beautiful formulation, a thought, sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. See how it works? Our thoughts determine our actions. And our actions, repeated, become habits. The group of all our habits determines our character. And our character determines our destiny. So that idea, we always have it in us to choose our thoughts. Yes, it's difficult. We have our samskaras, but we are going forward. We take the help of holy company. We take the help of spiritual practice, meditation, japa. Seek the blessings of Sri Ramakrishna. Seek the blessings of our teachers. I think that's a good place to stop. Shall we take just a moment of quiet? Then we can chant our prayer together. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma mritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. From the unreal, lead us to the real. From darkness, lead us unto light. From death, lead us to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you for giving me a chance to study this holy book with you. And tomorrow, Swami Sumanasananda will be giving a class on Bhakti Yoga, Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga. Friday night, of course, there's the reading from teachings of Swami Ramakrishnananda. And Saturday, we have our Karma Yoga Day. If you're free Saturday, 9 to 12, 9 to 1, we'll be doing various projects like garden, chandelier cleaning, what other things we need doing. The sound closet desperately needs a thorough cleaning, those kind of things.
Tell them to come on Saturday, particularly youngsters. Saturday Karma Yoga.
Yeah, everyone here is a youngster, it looks like.